This is the Sailing World on Water, July 17, 2020. This week we feature the UK challenger, INEOS Team UK, for the 36th America's Cup in Auckland, New Zealand next year. Their first boat, Britannia, was built by Carrington Yachts, and the RORC's Louay Habib talked about the build with Jason Carrington. Also last week 20 IMOCA yachts, new and old, competed in the first lead-up race before this year's Vendee Globe and the Vendee Arctique Las Sables. Jeremy Beyou and CHARAL was the winner from Thomas Byington linked out, all new boats, and Sam Davies led the old boat fleet home. Don't miss our extended report. Vittorio and Pietro of Quantum Sails Genoa have more on Luna Rossa's sails. Now over to Louay and Jason.
And moving on to the build of INEOS Team UK, Britannia, for the America's Cup in Auckland. It's a big program for the competition itself. The AC World Series, that's in December. The Prada Cup in February, and if they make the match itself in March. Will you be taking a team down there, or will INEOS be handling the boat repairs and maintenance from there on in?
Not even, Louis, to be honest. I think this is pretty challenging, but this RB1 we built alongside Hugo Boss, so we built them together. That was a very challenging time. It was about this time last year we were pretty close to delivering both boats, so we had a pretty big team split between the two projects. So actually, I think this boat left first on a barge, and then Alex's boat left about a month later. So it was definitely a challenging period. Yeah.
This America's Cup has an open book on design for the hull. Does that push you? Does that excite you?
Not at the moment. I would like to go. I don't have to go. I think that INEOS have a very strong. It's a very strong team all round, really. But the shore team is strong. The boat building team is led by a great mate of mine, Paul Quinny. So they're very capable of keeping the thing going. Of course, we'll support all we can, and if there are dramas, we're eager to help. No, I think once they've got the boat, they manage pretty well, and then they are. They've been sailing all this week on this boat. They had a good session in Italy, so I think they've been going well, and they're a great team to work with. Obviously, a great sponsor, and I think this second time around, it was pretty tough the first time. It just takes time to get a team like this up and running with all the different people and the different departments, and they feel they're certainly fun to work with, and it's challenging, but I feel they're a strong team, certainly.
Building an America's Cup boat has no margins. You're looking to take as much weight out of the build as possible. How does the team manage that risk v reward?
More just in terms for us, the builder. Last time with the Cats, that they were very much the engineering was a supplied package, and the hull lines were the same for the catamarans, the beams. It was kind of everyone had the same. It was really all about the boards and the systems. That's where people got the jump. Whereas now, you've seen the boats look quite different. The laminates are down to the engineers in each team. So it's made it a much bigger challenge, I suppose. It's been fun for us because we're involved in that, and we have guys from INEOS here every day. Have been here today, still will be here today. It's very much a combined effort, and they have a free run of the place. There's nothing, we don't hide anything, and we just work together to try to do the best we can. But these boats, certainly in terms of the composites, are even a notch up from the IMOCA boats in that there's very, very little margin on the structures. They're so refined. You can't afford to put massive safety factors on them. You've just got to. You don't want them to break, but you can't afford to be heavy for obvious reasons. So they're certainly a challenge. The good thing about these cut boats is we do structurally test them before we sail them. So we flip the whole boat upside down, and we put all the loads through the different structures, different systems, which gives you some confidence, but it's not the same as going out and sailing. When it's funny when we're doing the structural testing, it's dead. We normally do it at night. It's dead silent. You could hear a mouse run across the floor, and any little crack, everyone's you stop and you check it, and you go up in in little increments of load while you're checking the boat. But once you give it to the sailors, God knows what's going. You don't hear any of that stuff, and probably the loads are more coming much faster. It's interesting.
But you've got to totally get it on the design principle, and this is aerodynamics. This isn't hydrodynamics. This is aerodynamics. How do you switch over to that? It boggles my mind. You're switching from everything you've learned for many years has been hydro. This is aero.
Yeah, but that's really for the design team, and they have I'm sure all the teams have very strong people in those departments. But you're right. I mean, that's all very much considered in everything you make. Every part you make, has got some sort of fairing on it, or they're incredibly racing. The weight of some of these things is staggering. They're great fun. I mean, but it's just we've got a great team here who kind of get it, and this boat's managed by a chap called Mike Davis who works really closely with the team. He was up, we all worked with INEOS months before we started building certainly RB2, in terms of how we'd build it, how we'd tool it, what materials we would use, and so on. So yes, definitely a team effort.
And I know that you are very good friends with Marcello Persico and Mark Somerville, that are building Luna Rossa.
Yes, yeah, of course.
Do you just not talk to them at all? How does that work?
No, we talk, and we've built a lot of boats together over the years, and we've supported each. They've been good to us, and I hope we've been good to them. When helping out each other out with parts, and obviously we've all had a horrid time with this coronavirus, but they really were in the thick of it in Bergamo, and I've lived out there for many months with building boats for Nicholas and for Ian with Abu Dhabi, and so I know the place really well, and I know the team, and I'm very close with Marcello and Mark, and so that we chatted a lot then, and they had a tough time. They had to stop, and but there's obviously bits we can't talk about, but it's always interesting chats, but we're very careful not to say the wrong things. But it's not that's on the build front, but you've got Nick Holroyd, who's INEOS' head designer, I think he's one of his best mates is Guillaume Verdier, so I'm sure they have similar discussions.
Beyou wins a classic, the first ever Vendee Arctique Les Sables de l'An race. After one of the most thrilling battles in the history of the IMOCA class, Jeremy Beyou at the helm of CHARAL this evening sailed across the finish line to win the hotly contested Vendee Arctique Las Sables de l'An race. Beyou reached the line after a dramatic final 550 nautical mile final leg from the Gallimard waypoint, which saw him overtake Charlie Dallin on a Pivia, who was first at the waypoint, to take what looked like a firm lead. However, this remarkable race, one of the closest, if not the closest in IMOCA history, still had a last twist and turn as Thomas Ryan linked out stormed out from behind Dallin to overtake both him and Beyou. But in the deep reaching and downwind conditions and the powered up northerly breeze, Beyou managed to press forward again to retake the lead as he closed the French coast. By the finish he was well clear of Dallin, who finished in second place 50 minutes after Beyou, while Ryan had to settle for third, another 20 minutes back. It was fitting that at the end of this warm-up for the 2020 Vendée Globe, Beyou should cross the same finish line that will be used for the Round the World Classic in 2021. After he did so, he stood on the foredeck of CHARAL with his hands aloft in celebration. He had completed the shortened course in 10 days, 5 hours and 14 minutes, arriving at 20.44 local time. He had sailed a total distance of 3,284.3 nautical miles at an average speed of 13.4 knots. His prize is not just a big confidence boost for the Vendée Globe, but a special timepiece from the official race timekeeper Ulysse Nardin. By winning this super competitive fleet race, effectively round the cans to Iceland and back, Beyou has certainly put a marker down for the Vendee Globe, underlining that the combination of his remarkable experience and the optimized foiling setup on CHARAL is going to be a potent force on the round-the-world course. Beyou was never out of the top 5 throughout the 10 days at sea. He was in the leading group during the tough upwind phase early in the race, but then took the lead himself when crossing a major depression sitting off the west coast of Ireland. He then lost out to Dallin in light airs going north towards Iceland before capturing the lead again on the way south when 4 or 5 skippers were changing places at the top of the leaderboard. Beyou remained in contention, trailing either Dallin or Ryan at various times, and was then ready to pounce on the final leg to the finish. At that point the Vendee Arctic felt like a Figaro race, and Beyou, who has won the Figaro no less than 3 times, was in his element. The Vendee Arctique Las Sables race was designed by the IMOCA class as a substitute for 2 cancelled transatlantic races. The hope was that it would give the Vendee Globe sailors some confidence and time on the water in a competitive setting, as they continue their preparations for the round-the-world course in a season that has been beset by the pandemic lockdown. This was a south-north journey to waters previously unknown to the majority of the class, and it involved crossing several weather systems, with phases of strong upwind and downwind sailing but also plenty of light airs and flat water. What few observers guessed was that this would produce an intense battle that felt more like a Grand Prix than a marathon. But the testimony of the sailors at the finish also tells us that it fulfilled their hopes as a testbed for the Vendee Globe in many respects. The skippers were able to experience life on board in a competitive environment, get used to living in the hostile conditions of a super-fast foiling 60-footer on the ocean, and practice speed techniques in close proximity to their rivals. I didn't feel like setting off on the Vendee Globe without at least having done a test race single-handed, said second-place Charlie Dallin on Apivia. To do that, the Vendee Arctic fulfilled its role perfectly, as we had lots of situations to deal with, transitions and sail changes. It was a perfect training race to prepare for the Vendee Globe and thus validate all the work undertaken on the boats. Dallin used the race to test his competitiveness against winner Jeremy Beyou on CHARAL and third-place Thomas Ryan on Linked Out. It was a very rewarding race, and what's nice is that the 3 of us didn't let go of each other. Above all, I learned everything about sail choices and how to change them, how to do the maneuvers in different ways, at different levels of intensity, he said. Beyou, meanwhile, who crossed the finish line off Las Sables 50 minutes ahead of Dallin and 70 minutes ahead of Ryan, called the Vendee Arctic a unique format. The course had never been sailed before, he said. Inevitably there were a fair few unknowns, with the added pressure of not knowing if you and your boat were ready for the Vendee Globe, because it's coming up fast. The remarkably successful sailor admitted that he had treated this as a serious competitive challenge from the word go. I'd put pressure on myself, all on my own, he said. It was important for me to sail well. I was tense for the whole of the start of the race and then gradually relaxed into it, but it wasn't easy to live with the whole time. Sam Davies, who finished 4th on Initiative's Cur and was the leading skipper in the older generation boats that have been modified to accept foils, loves being on the water, and the Vendee Arctic proved the perfect environment for this very popular sailor to road test her Vendee Globe preparations. It was a real pleasure to get back out on the water in the solo format, she said after getting in 55 minutes ahead of her nearest rival, Kevin Escoffier on PRB. It had been such a long time. Me and my boat, were ready for the Vendee Globe. We validated the latest modifications made over the winter. I made the most of the opportunity to test lots of things, from trimming to freeze-dried food. Everything was geared around the Vendee Globe. Escoffier said he was very happy that IMOCA had managed to get this race established and approved. The class has really worked well to be able to organize this, he said. Without this race, qualifying for the Vendee Globe would have been very complicated, for safety reasons too. IMOCA has managed it brilliantly, he added. The intensity of this race was quite remarkable, with countless lead changes and 5 skippers at the head of the leaderboard at various times over 10 days at sea. As the finishers continued to make it to the line off Las Sables, the ticking clock told its own story, with the first 12 boats finishing within 7 hours and 10 minutes of each other after more than 2,800 nautical miles at sea. Among the most impressive performers were Beyou, Dallin and Ryan at the head of affairs, Sam Davies leading the older boats, and Maxime Sorel and Clarice Creamer in the leading non-foiling monohulls. Creamer led Sorel for much of the race before surrendering the initiative in the closing stages. In the end, Sorel pipped her by 1 place, finishing in 11th position on Van Mayen, 51 minutes ahead of the Banque Populaire 10 skipper. Finally, a last word from Beyou, who is not underestimating the importance of his victory in this warm-up for the Vendée Globe. Managing to do things right and secure the win, I can kind of settle down a bit, he said. I no longer feel this pressure on the eve of the Vendée Globe start. I know where I'm going, how you have to get there, and that is a great victory in itself. One image that I retain from this race is the final tack to the finish, he added. It was champagne sailing. There was 17-20 knots, 120-130 degrees to the wind, the boat was up on her foil in flat seas, and CHARAL was really great. It was fantastic.
Luna Rossa button booms.
We always asked ourselves where was the boom of Luna Rossa, and also the team always told something like the boom is there but you cannot see it, and was always a little bit not clear what was the boom and what wasn't the boom. And actually in the web series they launched in 1 month ago.
Yes,
we could see something about this kind of boom, no?
Exactly. There is an image in the loft where you can see the finishing of one of the mainsail foot, and so you see clearly a pocket for something like a curved button. So you see from the width of the pocket, you see that there cannot be inside anything that works as a let's say solid part, a solid piece. It's for sure a flexible part, but since this part has to follow the central curve of the cockpit division that Luna Rossa has, you have already a curve on a vertical plane. So this button is starts let's say horizontal and then goes down to follow the deck and the stern going down. But for sure you will have some kind of flexibility in this part. So each of the two twin mainsails have a flexible part at the foot. This looks like. Then also there is something like a box for control at the very end, so close to the clew of the sail.
Exactly. So we saw more or less all the other teams have a, let's say, traditional boom with the two skins of the mainsail, which are going around the boom itself, and then the control is the control of the shape is just the back part of the clew of the mainsail, just pushing and pulling the first button, which is quite low, and so a button designed to be compressed in a certain way, so to have the maximum, the draft, so the position of the maximum camber in a certain position.
In this case, Luna Rossa got rid of the boom itself, so they said, okay, since the sail will stay in the center line, there is no real need. We already have something that is stiff enough to keep the clew straight when we want it straight. So basically, the hull itself is stiff enough, no? To if you pull it close enough, you have a stiff part there. So you can just play with the buttons since the beginning of the sail, since the very lowest part of the sail.
Exactly. Obviously, the curve, let's say boom or button, it's something we can see, for example, on moths, and it's something which is working really well if you want to do a deck sweeper mainsail, no? Mm-hmm. In the moth, obviously, you need to have some space at a certain point to pass from one tack to the other. But in this case, we saw the crew of Luna Rossa is just passing behind, or maybe it's not passing at all from one side to the other, because they are for sure studying something like two helmsmen in the two different positions. So For sure, they are studying something not to move the crew, but anyway, they can have all the gap closed, so with this cured button, and then they can regulate the shape, so horizontal camber of these buttons, and also the different position, the different cambers between the inside and outside button, with a control system which is probably something which is hidden behind the mainsail itself. The controls there are actually free, totally free, so you can control the mainsail however you want. So we hypothesized at a certain point that there was a like pantograph system inside, able to move the button in different ways, to open and close the button in different ways, and to control the camber of the bottom part of the mainsail as well as possible. No?
But maybe seeing this part of the sail, maybe it's even easier than this. So it's instead of being a piece made out of solid parts, it's probably just a matter of a flexible button or something like a button, and kind of control, which can also be lines. Now, for example, the Enigma lines or something like this. So it's but anyway, let's say the concept is the same. So starting from the very bottom with the shape you like, and so be able to make the whole sail marginally flatter. So you have a little bit more shape in the bottom, where you don't have that much heaving moment and so on. And so having the ability of producing a sail much flatter in the middle and top. So that's the goal when you try to achieve something like this. The traditional boom forces you to have in high wind like a zero camber sail, which is better than having the draft after than the 50%, but is not the best.
Exactly. So actually, it's a way of let's say the mainsail design can be flatter, and so can count a little bit less. we can tell, and so you can have a really cambered mainsail, so a really deep mainsail. When you want, you just need to deepen the bottom part how you want, so in the precise manner you want, and then have the mainsail as flat as you want when you are going fast and flying. You know?
That's the goal. Everybody's working on solutions like this, but getting rid of the boom is for sure the most advanced solution we saw so far. So very, very interesting from Luna Rossa.
We will see if this will be copied like the
looks like because when they want to have depth in the bottom, they have some serious depth. So it's you can see from the photos. So it can be very, very, very good solution.
Sure.
Then you cannot ease the crew that much. So this can also be a problem. But we will see. Okay, ciao. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye bye.